Hello, my podcast listeners. Thank you for joining me on episode number 39 of the Fire Rescue Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Daisy, and today's episode is really exciting because I sat down with my friend, Dr. Allison Brager. Allison and I have been friends for about 4 years. We met at the Society for Neurosports in 2019, and ironically, we recorded this episode just prior to this year's Society for Neurosports Conference. Allison, as I mentioned, is a sleep neuroscientist. She's a major in the U.S. Army. She's a Crossfit athlete. Casually went through the astronaut selection process in her free time and is also the author of a book called Meathead. I hope you're going to really enjoy this podcast episode. Sit back, relax, and hear what Allison has to say about sleep. Thank you for joining me on the Fire Rescue Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, AZ. I find the research and resources and then provide the fire service with the so what, now what, to ensure the health and well-being of every member of our profession. Together, let's thrive. Hey, podcast listeners, it's AZ back with another episode of the Fire Rescue Wellness Podcast. And today I am live in person with my friend, Dr. Allison Brager. Allison, say hello to my podcast people.
Hi, it's so good to be here live and to see your face in person. It's been over a year.
I know, we got all of the hugs. And just a little bit of a backstory. We are here on the campus of Nova Southeastern, and it is one day until the 4th annual Society for Neurosports Conference. So we're both fired up for that.
Exactly.
We actually met at the Neurosports Conference.
We did. It's also a conference of matchmaking too, because that's where I met my wife a year after we first met.
And Dr. Katie Dabrowski from episode number 6 met Alex.
That's right.
Yes, and there's one more, right?
Well, yes, there was one last year, but then that didn't work out.
Oh, rats. Okay, so it's the Neurosports Matchmaking Conference. You heard it here first. Let's start with the introductory questions. Who is Allison Brager?
Well, I don't think anyone's ever asked me that before, except NASA. So when I went under selection to be an astronaut at NASA, I had to write 100 words about me. That was our first assignment we got when we were in flight, flying there to Houston. I got a text from NASA being like, you need to give us this by 5 p.m. when you get to the hotel. So I would say I'm just a kid from northeastern Ohio. That's, where I grew up. It's a pretty gritty, crappy place. And I learned the, how to push myself physically and psychologically to escape the not so great upbringing. But it's something I'm forever grateful for because I think it's shaped me into who I am today.
Who is a tremendous and awesome person. And I'm sure you caught it, but she casually dropped that NASA texted her. NASA has never texted me, so I'm just saying. All right, Allison, what sets your soul on fire?
I just love being around high energy, infectious people who love to, work together as a team to get stuff done. That's why I love serving in the military, is because you bring together people from all walks of life and different backgrounds and ideas and even different levels of education. And we're all faced with tackling and solving hard problems, some physical, but a lot of them mental, and just working together on a team to, get shit done.
Get shit done. And before we go to the third question, I want to dig a little bit more into that. You said team, and you previously were competing on a team. Give us just a tiny bit of backstory on that.
Oh, sure. The one and only Army CrossFit team.
That team.
Yes, that's kind of sort of still around, but not really. So it basically was a team of professional athletes that we competed for the Army in CrossFit. And we came from all different areas across the Army: pilots, doctors, lawyers, just, professions outside of normal infantry and combat arms that you would expect people to be physically fit in. But yeah, we basically, competed around the world in the country in CrossFit. Tried to make it to the CrossFit Games. We didn't make it that far, but it was awesome. The Army built a professional training facility for us. We worked out 5 to 6 hours a day. And I have some wonderful friends and teammates who, of course, you've met over the years from that.
Outstanding. And then last question, how are you changing the world?
I would honestly just like to say my positive energy and smile and just being a motivating force for others. One of our family friends, a few months ago, he told me, he's like, ever since I've known you in church since you were 7, you were always smiling and always happy. And I think that's, as I've gotten leadership positions in the Army and was previously a commander in the Army, like that's just what I do is I just try to have a commanding presence that's positive and motivates people instead of doing, the typical leading through, fear-mongering tactics and all the other characteristics you think of when you think of an Army leader.
I would absolutely love to be led by Dr. Brager. That would be outstanding.
Well, I feel mutually the same about you. So
maybe we'll lead each other.
We will lead each other. Yes, that's what we've been doing. We've been leading each other to different areas and challenges in life, personally and professionally.
But mostly to stake.
Yes, exactly.
We lead each other to stake.
Yeah, you would actually be disappointed because Valerie and I, my wife and I, we went and got steak last night, and I made it clear that I asked for medium rare. Like I asked her, I was like, you heard medium rare, right? And she's like, yeah. But then it came out and it was pretty much well done.
We do not eat well done steak.
No, we did not eat well done steak at all. It's unacceptable.
I wish I could remember that meme, but it's like rare, medium rare, fucking ruined or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, our friend Camille eats well done steak too. It's not a good thing. All right. Allison, I mentioned it was Dr. Allison Brager, but what we didn't dig into yet is the fact that you're a sleep neuroscientist. Please tell my listeners, what does that mean?
So I basically study people who sleep, and I deprive myself of sleep in order to study them. But yeah, I've been doing that for I'm old now, I guess, almost 20 years. So I started out in an adolescent sleep lab. So we looked at how puberty changes one's sleep timing and sleep cycle. And then I went to graduate school, did mouse models of sleep, which basically means you're creating genetically engineered mice, and then you give them a whole host of drugs that are potential sleep medications and see what impact those drugs have on their brain physiology. And then I switched over to military work, and that's how I ended up in the military. I was a direct commission as an officer. And now I do the same thing for the military. So we look at new use cases for existing sleep medications. We do captures of what sleep looks like in challenging environments, extreme heat, cold, intense physical training, intense, I wouldn't say cognitive training, but like social isolation. And then we also do a lot of sleep education for our soldiers because, you have this culture, much like fire, of people who think that sleep is for the weak and more often brag about how little sleep they got instead of how much sleep they actually got. And so we basically conduct science that challenges this cultural norm and use that to show people, like, basically that sleep deprivation is fatal in many instances. And if it's not fatal, it can lead to really bad accidents and just terrible health outcomes for people.
Allison, I don't remember if I read this in your book, the Meathead book, or if it was a presentation, but didn't you get your mice addicted to recreation? Coke? Was it Coke?
Yeah. So my first work was looking at how alcohol, cocaine, and then actually right after Michael Jackson died, of fentanyl, we started working with fentanyl because the NIH decided it was important now to look at fentanyl. But yeah, so believe it or not, these drugs have even though one's, depressant and another one's a stimulant, they have very similar impacts on the sleep system neurochemically. they basically all stop the biological clock that keeps track of cues in our environment that we then use to help us sleep at night or cue us when to wake up or be alert throughout the day. It stops that clock from working.
Allison, what are those cues that are telling us to wake up or are telling us to go to sleep? And then maybe if you could further dive into what confuses those cues.
Oh, that's easy. So light is the biggest cue. It's the same reason why you live in Chicago. I live in North Carolina, but when I used to live in New England, it used to suck in the winter, right? There's a reason why seasonal affective disorder exists. But it's the same thing. Sleep's an issue during that time because you're waking up to go to the firehouse and it's dark outside, and you might do your first few calls in the day and it's still dark outside. And then in the afternoon, it's dark outside again. So, when you're getting 5 or 6 hours of sunlight in a day, it can really disrupt not just your sleep, but your energy levels. And so that's why a lot of times with firefighters, we recommend that they buy a blue light box. So a blue light box, it's basically like a more potent version of your phone. And all it does is emit blue light because blue light is an alertness promoting signal for humans. So that's one cue. Second cue is, social interaction. And that's really directly relevant to firefighters because so much of what you do is coming down from a sympathetic state when you're either anticipating a call or, responding to a call or coming back from a call. So you really have to develop a technique. And there are techniques out there that are evidence-based and successful to help you downregulate and get back into a normal state that's not high stress.
Why don't you keep going with that? What are those techniques? What can we do?
So there's there's a lot of evidence now with mindfulness-based meditation practices. So there's 4 different categories, right? There's this one called progressive relaxation, where you think about you consciously think about which muscles are tense, and one by one you relax them. It's best done while lying down, but you can do it while, sitting as well. There's the actual, guided meditation napping. So yoga nidra. I know it also goes by the name iRest. That was something the military at Walter Reed championed a few years ago. But it's basically putting on this soundtrack, and somebody has a soothing voice, and they sort of guide you into a state of relaxation. It might not be sleep, but it's relaxation. And then some people use attentional visual things, like you just focus, you redirect your focus by looking at a pretty picture in the room. So if you put a landscape picture of a environment that you find relaxing, like maybe out in the, hiking in the Tetons or, out, hiking in the Grand Canyon, maybe here in beautiful South Florida, looking at well, we don't have that right now, but if you were to think that we were directly on the beach right now, something like that. So there's different ways, and it only takes 5 minutes, but that 5 minutes can save you, hours of stress that you really wouldn't know until, you have more compounded stress with more calls. But it can really make a difference whether you physically feel it or not.
And I know you and I have talked about shift work a lot, and the World Health Organization has made some pretty strong statements about shift work and how it is more or less a carcinogen, but it's also, shift work really isn't optional for us. Right. So talk to us about how we can soften the impacts of working shifts.
Yeah, exactly. It's I'm happy you say that shift work is not an option. It's a necessity. Because I think a lot of people, I come from academia, but I chose to leave academia in the ivory tower. And a lot of people in the ivory tower don't understand that. They study shift work, and then their recommendations are, well, then don't do shift work. I'm like, well, most of America, that's how they survive and feed their families. So, a lot of the recommendations that I have are those based on how we study shift work in the military, because for us, we have to do shift work. That's how we win our nation's wars, is we fight at night. And so one of the things that we've been a proponent for, and something that has worked really well for us, is during your shift, try to use those meditation, mindfulness techniques I talked about. But then secondly, try to nap as much as you can. And I know a lot of firehouses are setting up their I don't want to call it waiting room, but what do you call it? Like the rec room? Yeah. The rec room, where they're taking out the iridescent light bulbs and replacing them with red light, because the human body is not sensitive to red light. And so it creates a more relaxing space. Putting in like more comfortable chairs than those like shady, leather sticky couches that I've seen in a lot, or like the poor, like heavy cloth couches that have a spring or two sticking out of them. Like really investing in those little things that can make a big difference. And then the other thing is when you're off shift, like, I tell firefighters this all the time, is you have to sleep as much as you can. Like sleep is your second job, or in most cases, it's probably your third job, because I know a lot of firefighters have a second job too. But like sleep is just as much of a job as being at work on the job.
I prioritize sleep, and so I'm nodding my head.
Yeah, you are like the ideal role model for like you are.
Thank you. But many administrators, I think they're starting to come around, but still there's that pervasive attitude of, we do not pay you to sleep.
Yep.
Like, we'll allow you to take a few minutes in the chairs after lunch, but we do not pay you to sleep. How, and we can't convince people of anything. Mm-hmm. I'm not in the business of convincing, but what are some words we could say to those administrators that might sort of spur them to action, to realize that although, maybe they don't pay us to sleep, it is super important?
So I want to say these are fear-mongering tactics. Well, actually, they are fear-mongering tactics.
Preach it, girl.
So, and this is stuff, we've had this issue in the military too. I think I told you about at Walter Reed, we were able to get napping pods there, because same thing, you have senior military leaders who are medical professionals saying, well, why would I pay somebody to sleep on the job at work? People who nap are lazy, like classic, stigmas. And we took those exact words and put them in an editorial that went to the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, which is like the world's governing board on sleep, with, refuting their points. And sure enough, that publication was like resulted in Walter Reed getting their sleep pods. Like we didn't put like who said that exact comment, but those senior leaders knew that we were willing to play, because we did. Not to say you should go to that level, but the two tactics we use is, one, you would never show up to work drunk. And if you look at the consequences of sleep deprivation, past 18 hours, it looks no different than somebody who has a blood alcohol content of 0.06. At 24 hours of sleep deprivation, which is most fire shifts, it's as if you are performing legally drunk. And it's true, like the NIH has done these studies where they've done head-to-head comparisons of people they actually give alcohol to and people they sleep deprive at the same time, and their cognitive performance, like vigilance, attention, those measures look no different. So that's something we say is like, would you show up to work drunk? No, but we show up sleep deprived all the time. And then the other thing is, I always bring attention to terrible accidents that have happened that are 100% a fatigue related cause. The more popular one I use today is when the McCain and the Fitzgerald collided, the two missile carriers for the Navy, and killed 49 sailors. That was a direct result of fatigue. I show our studies where we found that combat effectiveness drops by 50% the minute you're deprived of sleep by 30%. So it's, I hate to say, like, we use bad news stories, but that's the only way I think administrators listen, because they don't want anyone getting hurt or dying on their watch.
Well, and we know that cancer and suicide and cardiovascular disease and like 9 of the top 15 mortality or causes of mortality are all directly related to sleep. But if we put that aside, sleep deprivation is also related to medication errors and motor vehicle accidents while on job and things like that. So I think we really do need to care about it, and we really need to stop that attitude if we don't pay you to sleep.
Right, exactly. And I think for your line of work too, what people don't forget is, I mean, really, the public is your customer. So you have to have like customer service relations too. And the first thing that is hijacked when you're sleep deprived is your emotional centers. And so that emotional volatility and inability to think rationally goes out the window the minute you're sleep deprived. So you're not going to be effective there too. You know, people aren't going to listen to you or respect your authority because you're volatile.
All right. You mentioned doing research on sleep medications. Mm-hmm. And I know you have very strong opinions on sleep medications. So let's just say hypothetically, I'm a firefighter. I'm coming to you, Allison, I need information. I can't sleep, and I'm thinking about going to my doctor and having them prescribe a medication. How would that conversation go for you?
So what I would do is I would first explore different over-the-counter options first. Medications, hypnotics, I mean, that's what they're called, are a last resort. That used to be commonplace, but now that we see the consequences of hypnotics on terrible things happening, and then quite frankly, it's addiction. It's basically just as strong as being on a barbiturate, pretty much. So I go down the road of over-the-counter things. My top 3 over-the-counter, and consider I know drug regulations and drug testing because I'm drug tested all the time too. So things like CBD, well, I know that would work. And, I think honestly, CBD and the endocannabinoids is the best target. But 3 things that do work beyond that are, so GABA. GABA is the inhibitory neurochemical. And it comes in many forms. Always look for a company that is third-party tested, that it's endorsed by NSP and NSF. Basically, that means that they are looking to make sure that you could pass a drug test at the level of being an Olympic professional athlete. Because there's no more scrutinous of a drug test than that of a professional Olympic athlete. So that's a good one, is GABA. I mean, I could throw out a few companies out there, but one company is Thorne, Thorne. They have great relationships with the tactical community, military and fire, police. A second one, it sounds sketchy, but it's actually, I think, the best for firefighters is ashwagandha. Also goes by the name KSM 66. The reason why this is so effective, I actually take it. It elevates cortisol, because that's the thing in our jobs and our line of work is you have those cortisol spikes throughout the day. So if you take it once or twice daily, it can help improve your sleep at night indirectly because it's stabilizing your cortisol. A lot of athletes use ashwagandha too, especially like in CrossFit athletes, because they're always on the brink of being overtrained, which, true in general about CrossFit. It's just a recipe for seeing how far you can push your body without getting overtrained. And then the third one is magnesium biocarbonate, which seems like a mouthful, but it goes by the trade name Calm, CALM. I think everyone should be on magnesium biocarbonate. That is an essential element that is rapidly depleted in our line of work, either through physical fatigue or cognitive fatigue. A lot of firefighters experience periodic limb movements when they sleep at night. They have, leg kicks, leg jerks. I'm the same way, and that magnesium biocarbonate really helps to reduce that from happening. But if neither of those three work and that person legitimately has an issue, I would first refer them to what our dearest friend, Dr. Jennifer Goldschmied does, which is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia.
Yes.
So that is the most effective form of treatment for insomnia or sleep issues is behavioral intervention, where you're working with this trained expert in sleep research who dissects your sleep routine and figures out where you're struggling and why you're struggling. And if that doesn't work and you really do have what we call idiopathic insomnia, which is just your neurochemistry and your, brain circuitry is just hijacked, then that's when you actually go to a sleep doc and perhaps get on a medication or a psychotropic or something else like that. That is the last resort, though.
That's really good to have all those options before going to the doctor for medication. Thank you. You and I discussed, you sent me a paper a couple of years ago, or maybe we just had a conversation, but we were talking about apnea in the military.
Oh, yeah.
And how it's a similar percentage as the general population, except those military members are much younger and much leaner.
Mm-hmm.
And after we had that conversation, I came across this, it's called the Sullivan study. And it was, I believe, 5,000 or 6,000 firefighters. So a huge study. And they found 37% of the firefighters had a sleep disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And of that 37%, 80% of them were untreated and they didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
So bottom line, there could be a lot of us walking around with a sleep disorder. Do you think that that's related to the shift work?
Oh, absolutely. It's related to shift work. It's also just related to how we're composed physically. Muscle weighs more than fat. And I understand that while sleep apnea is precipitated by being overweight, honestly, having a thick muscular neck and carrying a lot of extra muscle around your trunk because we have to can make the difference. And anyone can have, sleep apnea. I have sleep apnea. I have mild sleep apnea. So it's not managed through CPAP. I just have to make sure I get enough sleep. Yeah, I would say it's higher than 37% now. It's probably as high as the military, which is over 80%.
Wow.
So whether they're treated or not is, not as widely studied. We just know that 80% have at least one or more sleep disorders.
So the NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association, agency, whichever, the NFPA, recently updated their suggestions or their protocols for our physicals to include mental health screenings and sleep screenings. And many departments aren't including those sleep screenings yet. And so I've been offering, the PSQI that they could do online. Is that good advice or should I be giving different advice?
No, I think that the PSQI is the Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index. I mean, that's the most common index used that we use in our studies. It's basically, it was created by the world's experts in sleep, Dr. Dan Bizey, University of Pittsburgh. He's been in the field for 50 years, has worked with the military and tactical populations. It basically just outlines how you feel when you wake up in the morning, but in a way that's, clinically valid and reliable. It dissects what you do the night before you go to bed, just different elements, how often you wake up, things like that. It's a super easy 5-minute questionnaire that can provide somebody with a lot of insight.
All right. I feel validated now. I'm going to actually put that link in the show notes so that all the listeners can check out their PSQI. All right, Allison, I want to be respectful of your time, but I want to go one more topic. I know that you are pretty passionate about this one. Caffeine in general, and then energy drinks specifically. Our population, both your military and my fire population, as well as the law enforcement population, go hard on energy drinks. Mm-hmm. So give us the basic caffeine safety speech, and then let us know potentially those dangers with those energy drinks.
Yes. So you just want to get me all riled up, right?
You go. Yeah. Let's go. Allison.
So I worked at Walter Reed for the first 5 years of my career. So I got to work with Dr. Tom Balkin, who's like the longest federal employee of the military who has studied sleep. He's been around for 40 years, and a lot of what Tom has studied has been strategic caffeine dosing schedules. So basically what that means is when under sleep deprivation, do you need to supplement with caffeine in order to protect your attention and vigilance? Well, I'm here to tell you that one, after 3 days of chronic sleep deprivation, so just sleeping 30% less than you normally do, forces caffeine to stop working. Like, you basically, at that point of 3 days of being chronically sleep deprived, need sleep. Caffeine will do you no amount. The other thing Tom has found is that it's only 200 milligrams and no more than 200 milligrams at a time. And that's every 4 to 6 hours. So already right there, that means pretty much every single energy drink is out of the picture. The exception might be those new clean energy drinks that have like 200 milligrams of caffeine. So the more natural energy drinks, I don't have a problem with those because they do it's a caffeine source that's carbonated, basically. It doesn't have the extra taurine and the extra like excitotoxic chemicals that you have in the standard energy drinks. The ones that I have a vendetta against are Bang, Monster, Reign. What else is out there? C4, the classic military Rippets. There's one that's
Red
called
Bull?
like Tiger Blood.
Oh,
yeah,
Lord.
Red Bull too. But actually Red Bull, if you have the little can, the 8 ounce, that's less than 200 milligrams. I mean, it still has the taurine and stuff in that, but that's certainly better than, nowadays I see Bang and, Monster everywhere. The reason why those don't work, number one, is because they have more than 200 milligrams at a time. They have close to 450. And not only that, but those extra neurochemicals of caffeine plus taurine plus other ingredients I can't even think of off the top of my head, what they do is they create a excitotoxic state in the brain. They haven't studied this in a human model, but in animal models, they have shown that rats who have the same brain circuitry as us, the only difference is they don't have as many folds in their frontal cortex as us. It kills their brain cells. It's called premature neuronal cell death. It's because there's too much glutamate being expressed at that time from energy drinks. But what we have shown in humans is we did a study a few years ago at Walter Reed where we found that 2,000 soldiers who routinely drank energy drinks, so we're talking about 2 or more energy drinks a day, fit the clinical inventories for anxiety, depression, fatigue, aggression, and burnout. And obviously, I think it's because of neurotoxicity going on in that brain of theirs. Now, it's not to say like you shouldn't, you should never have an energy drink because, sometimes when I've been deployed and awake for 60 hours, like if that's going to keep you safe, it's going to keep you safe. It's the chronic use. That's the issue. But caffeine, honestly, if you strategically supplement with caffeine, you should be just fine. There's new nootropics out there that contain, that are alertness promoting. One is like alpha GPC. That's great too, because at least with caffeine or at least with coffee and these nootropics, you're getting like the neuro protective benefits of caffeine that don't exist in energy drinks. So yeah, not a fan.
Let me make sure I got this right. In your 2,000 soldiers that were having 2 or more energy drinks a day, they were manifesting anxiety, depression, fatigue, aggression, and burnouts.
Yes, exactly. All 6 things that are the biggest issues with firefighters.
Recipe for disaster.
Yes.
Holy shit, Allison. All right. I always end with two little topics. The first one is Was there a rabbit hole we should have gone down that I just blew it and we didn't go down the rabbit hole? Anything you can think of?
I would say, we could talk a little bit about the genetics of like your sleep schedule. Like, even if you don't have control over your schedule, I think leaders in fire should at least be aware of who is truly a morning person or who is truly a night owl, because that can make all the difference in terms of scheduling. Like, for example, I mean, it's true. I will never be anything more than I will retire happy as a colonel. I can never possibly be a general in the Army because I'm incapable of it. I am a vampire. This about me. It's like I get going when you're about to go to sleep. Yes. I wake up around 8:30 in the morning. I have banker's hours at work. I roll in around 9:30, and I'm allowed to do that because I'm a scientist. I'm not anyone important. I can never be higher up leadership in the military because I know my sleep fights against it. But I like my sleep too much, and I'm not willing to sacrifice my quality of life for a career in the Army. So I think that's something for administrators to keep in mind, is really put those morning people on those morning shifts and put those night people on those night shifts, because that little thing will make all the difference in avoiding fatigue, burnout, anxiety, depression, and all those other things we talk about.
And we are sitting next door to another sleep scientist office, Dr. Jamie Tartar. And if I'm not mistaken, she either sent me this paper or she was the author on the paper that was larks versus night owls.
Yes.
And basically the determination is the world is set up for larks.
Yes.
And you just have to really work really hard as a night owl to optimize.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Fortunately, NASA doesn't feel that way, so that's good. I met a lot of night owls when I was there.
So I woke up this morning. I slept in. So I'm from Chicago. I'm in Florida right now, so I'm a little bit messed up with the time zone, but it was around, 6:30, and I thought, I should text Allison to just check on the plan for today. Oh, no. It is far too early to text Allison.
Yes.
But then at 7, she texted me. It was very shocking.
Yeah, well, that's because unfortunately when I'm home, I'm on my wife's schedule, who's a lark. So we don't have to address that for another 14 years until I retire. But
that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, it will be. She claims that she can be a night owl, but we'll see.
I don't. Well, Valerie and I will talk, but I just don't think that you can really switch that effectively.
It's okay.
All right. The last thing we need to talk about is, let me set the listeners up. I still can't remember whether it was 3 Neurosports conferences ago or 2, but Allison and I and Dr. Goldschmied, who she mentioned, we were sitting on the beach enjoying a beverage, and here came the cutest little dog. And so we started talking with the owners of the dog, and they said it is a pot cake dog.
Mm-hmm.
So we all took pictures and loved on the dog. And recently,
yes,
Allison and Valerie got a pot cake dog. Tell us about Annie.
Oh, so Potcake Annie, you can follow her on Instagram. She's the cutest. It's potcake_ANNIE. But she's a rescue dog from the Bahamas. We knew we wanted to get a dog together, and we wanted it to be a rescue. And I think enough time had passed where my dearest little dog, Eva, she recently passed away. So enough time had passed where I was ready to get a new dog. But yeah, Annie came over here from a plane ride. She was plucked from the streets of Nassau.
The hard streets.
The hard streets of Nassau. She does not like water, and she's pretty much turned into a princess. Like she's spoiled now, and she knows it. But she is extremely adorable. We did get her genotyped. She is mostly Chow Chow. Has some pit bull in her, some German Shepherd, but she has a beautiful coat, and she definitely is sassy.
And Valerie did promise that she's going to start churning out more Potcake Annie content. So
yes, she did promise. So now she has to deliver.
We both heard her. All right. Well, this has been very informative, and I am so glad we got to meet in person, Allison.
I know. I'm so happy. It actually was, I think it was meant to be that my work prevented us from podcasting the first time.
Yeah, we had it all set up, and then I think it was a security issue when you were on base.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I work in a secure building, so it's,
wow.
The government might be listening in.
Probably. And what you should hear is that Allison is way cooler than all of us.
No, that's not true.
Well, listeners, thank you very much for joining us. I will put Allison's Instagram handle in the show notes, so you can definitely give her a follow or reach out. And with that, this is AZ and Allison, and we are officially out.
We are out.
We're out. Thank you, Allison.
Do you have a call sign?
Oh.
Can
you give me one?
Really? Yeah, I'll have to think of a good call sign for you.
What's your call sign?
Mine's Hunter.
Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
NASA asked me that, and I was like, I didn't tell them the real story, though.
It sounds like I should shut off the recording for the real story.
Oh, it's not that. It's just I used to like hunt for hot chicks at Whole Foods. So
okay,
that's how I got it.
AZ and Hunter. No, AZ and code sign Hunter.
Yeah.
Is that how I say it?
Call sign.
Call sign. God, AZ and call sign Hunter are officially out.